Valentine's Day! I love you all. And as promised, we do have chocolate. I think you've seen that spread out on the back table. And you see that little rolling cooler? That's where the champagne is. We will have it later. So I want to give you just a quick rundown of how I'm going to do it today. This is the first PowerPoint I've ever done. My daughter's been doing it since middle school or elementary school. And I'm going to make a confession, so hopefully you'll go easy on me if I start to babble. But I was working on it last night, and at 2 a.m. in the morning, I thought I was halfway done, and I lost everything and had to start all over. So at the end of my Tales from the Heart, talking about my artwork and talking about how I came to be at the Art Center and curating what that's been like for me, I have some points of inspiration, and one of them is chaos. And I should have started, I can tell, I should have started with chaos, the points of inspiration, because it seemed like everything and anything that was going to go haywire did. But I love you, and I hope that you will grant me my frailties. So, we're going to start out with the journey, yes. And a lot of you have been on this journey with me. Thank you for that. And there I am. I like to say that this is proof that I am a Martian. And if you could see the rest of my head, you would really know that I was Martian. That's where the antennas are. But I was born to these two lovely people, Grace and Bill. And that was 59 years ago. Yeah. And my mom and dad are from New England. My dad was a serviceman, and so we traveled quite a bit. We lived in many different places. I have a brother. He is invisible on social media. If you're my friend on Facebook, he is a wonderful guy, a year older than I. This is all of us, me and my brother, Cuzzies. Those are the Bergie kids. And I like to point out that I was mix and match duds even then. My brother is the one in plaid. And he is a Billy Bergmann. And one of the little babies is another Billy Bergmann who was born however many years later on my brother's birthday. And my dad is a Billy Bergmann. So there you go. We moved around a lot, as I said. We lived primarily in Florida, California, and Germany. This is a shot when we were living in Orlando, when there was an Air Force base there. That was McCoy Air Force Base that is no longer. But it was a very exciting life. We lived in Germany. I was grade 1 through 4. And so comic books were very important to us then, and we watched Bonanza in German. And I did grow up in an American base neighborhood, and one of our classmates' parents sent her to German school, and we thought that was so mean. But of course now, Mom and Dad, why? You know, looking back, it was, oh, she learned German, and wow, the adventures, but it was an adventure all the same. This is a shot of me when we had moved to California. And how that happened was, how we ended up in Dunedin, because we've been here a really long time. My parents bought the house that they still live in. My daddy's 90, my mom's 87. In the, early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And do you know, at that time in our county, my dad was going abroad and they were looking for a house to rent with just a couple little kids. Nobody would rent anybody who had kids. So my dad being, they traveled their whole lives, he was terrified. They were forced to buy their first house, which as it turns out was the best thing ever. And the rest is history. They live right here, 5 minutes this way. And we stayed while my dad went on a long assignment. He was gone a lot. And we stayed here because my grandfather lived here. And that's where my daughter Ava and I live, in my grandfather's house. Right down the street from the church that I went to, my grandpa's church, and grandma, and my elementary school, San Jose. So this was me when I went to California, and I was totally into soul music. This I remember my mom bought me this Velcro suit against my will. It had a big lightning bolt, you can see, and those were happy times. I was there until midway in high school, which you can imagine, came back here then. Somewhere along the way, I discovered, art. And I love to draw. And I don't know how many people, did anybody enter Draw Winky? I know. Did you get a letter? No way. They must have. They tried to reach you. I did get a letter, but if only I'd held on to it though. But yes, I have all the books, drawing horses, drawing animals, and art was always a great love. And I think about kids today and all the electronics and living in Germany and having to entertain ourselves without the popular culture. I'm grateful for that, looking back. So now we're jumping ahead. I graduated from Dunedin High School with Todd. Todd helped me get everything together earlier. And while I was in high school, I took classes at the Art Center. It was much smaller then. Yes. I took a boutique class with Jim Nordmeyer. Has anybody been here long enough to remember Jim Nordmeyer? Oh my gosh. I had such a crush on him. He was so personable. He brought goodies to class all the time. He taught batik, and he used the form as a painter versus pattern, which we most often think of batik as fabric making. But he was not, our love affair was not to be, and he was gay, and he was actually the first person I knew to die of AIDS. But he was a dear person in our community. So here I am. I went straight away to college. Unlike my daughter, who's so much wiser than I went to Flagler initially, and I had become involved with, I was raised Catholic, I don't know if I mentioned that, which is truly formative for me. And it wasn't in the fundamental sense, but I really think that a big part of who I am is based upon my faith upbringing. So in high school, I got involved in a Christian community, non-denominational, the Protestants. My dad's a Protestant, he's a Republican, my mom's a Democrat, she's a Catholic. You know the story, lots of rolling eyes over the dinner table and differing opinions. So I was introduced to sort of the Protestant version of Christianity in high school, a non-denominational group that I loved. I ended up going to Flagler when I first went away to school, and I thought I wanted to become, of course, the Catholic Church, you can't be a priest. So I thought, I will be a minister. I was very interested, so I studied religion. I had a wonderful mentor, Dr. Maddie Hart, who was a priest in the Episcopal Church. But what happened? Art. And I had two great teachers at Flagler, Don Martin, who's an incredible printmaker, I don't know where he is now, and Enzo Torcoletti, an amazing sculptor. And those were lovely memories, but I quickly wanted to go further. I wanted to move on. I wanted to test myself. I started to feel like the Christian community in that state was not gonna be for me with them and us. I wanted to explore, and I'd never really done that. I never really explored my mind or tested my spirit to find out who I was. So I wanted to go to Antioch. Does anybody know Antioch? Antioch University. The reason why I wanted to go there was I wanted to study with a lot of different people. I wanted to do art. I wanted to just learn. They had a work study. That was their main thing. So I took some time off. My brother was going to Dartmouth, as did Richard Entell, who if you've been around, you guys might know that he's one of my oldest friends. If you saw the Cardboard Menagerie, did anybody see the Cardboard Menagerie? Everybody knows Sid and Erwin, and Richard is their youngest son. But he was going to Dartmouth, my brother was going to Dartmouth, and I decided while I was waiting to transfer to my new school that I was going to go up there, and I studied some art, and I studied dance, and I worked on a farm, and I lived in the only house on Fraternity Road that was not a fraternity house. It was where all the radicals lived. And that just was fine by me. So I worked on a farm, and I worked in a toy department in the basement of a hardware store in Hanover, New Hampshire. So, and it was all good. It was all for the learning. I did go to Antioch. I didn't stay long because, as you might know, it's a very, very old university, along with Oberlin. But it's no longer. They had financial difficulties, and the appeal for me of studying with many different people, they were starting to phase out, and they were asking you to stay there on the Ohio Yellow Springs campus. So I ended up going to FSU, and that's where we find me here. It's my first car, $600. Nash Rambler. And the seat folded back and turned into a bed. But So at FSU, I was an art major, and I studied with two of my mentors, William Walmsley, who is the innovator of fluorescent lithography. So I was big into printmaking, monoprints, and learned color lithography. Has anyone done lithography where you're working with the stone? Have you? It's very labor intensive, and the stones are becoming, there's only so many in the world because they come from a very special place in Bavaria, I believe. But you grind it down, you lay, as with most print processes, you're laying each color, we're working with acids, and it's very scientific, very labor intensive, and time. You must be a good planner. But I did enjoy it at the time. It turned out it was not going to be my long-term love as far as art making. But I also worked with Mr. Arthur Deshays, and he was a legend. And he was a crazy Frenchman, and at that time he was probably in his late 70s, crazy white hair and big beard, and he had been born on the ship between France and America. He was one of the, he was in with the Abstract Expressionist group back in the day in New York. But he was a wonderful teacher, and I credit him with great encouragement. So after college, and I got my BFA, painting and printmaking, I did some traveling, and it's so wonderful now with the cell phones. I made a joke at our last artist talk that I don't call my phone, I call it my camera. But at this point, I had a regular camera, and in my travels, I was taking photos left and right, which I still do. And at the time, you remember how we used to have to bring them to the photo lab and wait, and then I was one of those people that they hated to see coming because I was generating so much film that once you found out you didn't have to buy everything that you made, I would go through it. So I made many albums, and I look back at those, and I see my aesthetic. I was born really during that time. So I have many of these. It was kind of like a visual journal, which is really the way I use my phone now. So at this point, I really didn't know how I was going to make a living. I knew that I would always be an artist, and I came from a family that has a very strong work ethic. So I thought, I just always automatically got to work a day job, but I was seeking jobs where I wasn't taking on a whole lot of responsibility. And when I first got out of college, I worked at Ruth Eckerd Hall. I worked in the box office. Then I worked at Home Shopping, and I worked there on and off over the years. And at one point, they got me, and they were luring me with more money. And I started in the first data entry department with Home Shopping, and there were 5 of us. And you can imagine the empire that it is. You can imagine how crazy that was. It was in the old Levitt Center on US 19. But I saw how much fun they were having in the control room, and everything was live, and I thought, I'll take a pay cut from $5.50 to $4 or $10, or something crazy. No, I want to have a creative job. I'm going into the control room. Well, it was the best thing that I ever did. And of all the jobs that I've held over the years, there's always other creatives who are looking to find a way to keep their vision alive and also make money. So I met many wonderful creative people in that time of my life, and they did ultimately get me for a really good paying job as a video graphic designer once I wandered and I came back around. But how many were at the Founders Luncheon when we were celebrating Brooke? And Babs talk about the gig economy. That was so interesting to me. There's Brooke. Hey, everybody! So that's been a motivation really my whole life, but I always ended up with a full-time job. I just always did. And then I did my art on the side. So here, I had a studio. I got a studio in Tarpon Springs. I've had 2 studios. Most of the time I've worked out of my house since I've been out of college. And as a printmaker, you really need access to a press if you're going to carry on with that. But I got involved with collage, and ultimately I got involved with assemblage. So this was a period of time when my original plan, which everybody has one, but how many have stuck with their original plan? I know there are of those people. How many? Really, I want to see. Wow! Thank you guys. Erwin stuck with his plan. Yes. And we wanted to go backward, and you did it. Well, I was going to go to grad school. That was what I really wanted to do. I wanted to study. I wanted to get my MFA, and then I wanted to teach. I wanted to teach college art. And I applied to the Chicago Art Institute. I applied to Cal Arts in California, and I really wanted to go to the Art Institute, which was Brooke's beginning, and I didn't get accepted. And I had a sweetheart in college who was 10 years older than I, and he never even told me that he had applied and he got a full scholarship. So that was a sad time. I deferred my acceptance to Cal Arts. I had full intention. It was very expensive. But I went and stayed a little bit in Chicago. So this was in the studio of my sweetheart at the time, who did graduate, did go to graduate school at the Art Institute of Chicago, and he renovated an old lamp factory in Chinatown, which is near the Lithuanian part of Chicago, all those old neighborhoods. So it was pretty cool. There were a lot of artists there, and a huge space to create. So I started to do these large-scale fabric collages. And these are kind of the beginnings. I wasn't good at documenting, so you can kind of get a feel of where I was going. These are some etchings that I worked over with paint then and collage. Some more of they were almost like banners, and I was using old window shades. This is a completed piece that's in the collection of Dennis Gaston. So I started to do the outdoor shows. I was so against it. I thought, oh, not do those outdoor shows. No, I will be a gallery artist. But you know what? When I was in the workaday world, it was so important to me to have deadlines. And once I started to do the outdoor festivals, especially in Florida, is it hard to hear? Oh, no. There's great incentive, there's wonderful prize money, and the most rewarding part of it for me was I found my community. I was in the workaday world, but I was reaffirmed as an artist because I was always then very driven to create new work. I always had another show down the line, and I started to have great success. Not so much originally with buying in the beginning, but with the prize money, I had a lot of encouragement, and the main encouragement, the friendship of other artists. These were some works that I started to go into sculpture and assemblage. Both of these works are in the collection of the Polk Museum of Art in Lakeland. And that was a consequence, ironically, of an outdoor show in Mayfair by the Lake. When Ken Rollins was the director at that time, he had a commitment to buying work. Every Mother's Day weekend was when Mayfair was. The artists called it Bake by the Lake. Very high. So you can see that I'm working with a lot of different materials. I started to use beeswax more as an aesthetic. You have to use real joining material like epoxy when you're combining elements. But I loved the scent and aesthetic of beeswax. These were from the same body of work. This piece is called A Spoon of Love and Bewilderment. This is a balsa wood needle hanging on a ship's cleat, and I made a special little hanging element. And my aesthetic, as maybe you'll see when I start to share some of the objects that I have collected over the years, I love the idea of wabi-sabi. I love the element of the hand and being evident in work, in creative work. I like to see that a human made it. I'm always impressed by masterful technique, but I do love the nuance of what is human. This far piece uses a cuckoo clock weight, and there's a fan, an antique fan underneath, and there's fabric and beeswax painted on. So I'm a big collector of objects. I still am, although I haven't really been making work for some time. The Spoon of Love and Bewilderment, I just mentioned that because when I lived in Germany as a child at a carnival, I got the best prize. And it was a keychain and it had a disc. And on one side it had some little scribbling marks, on the other side it had scribble marks. And it was held in a little U, and you could spin it. And when you spun it, the little marks on each side formed together in the movement to say, I love you. So that was a seed pod inside, and that's on the Spoon of Love and Bewilderment. It's encased under a lens, a microscopic or telescopic lens, very, very thick. It's about this big. I know it's hard to tell the scale, but I painted those little marks on either side of the two sides of the seed pod there. And most of these pieces belong in people's collections. So people did start to buy my work, and I was receiving awards, and that was wonderful because it was the encouragement to keep me going. My dad, once I started to, bring in that money, he was like, yeah. He used to call my art maximum utilization of trash and debris. So, this was a show at Salt Creek, which is no longer in St. Petersburg. The one on the far side is called Nymph, and you can't really get the dimensions, but it's quite large, and that's a pickaxe head. But it comes off the wall, and it's almost like a mermaid's tail, and it's supported by these the thin string on either side. This one is called the seer, and it's held in place by tension. I forget what I called this one, but I know that in gathering my materials, I became enamored of the dump in Tarpon. Tarpon has a lot of marine refuse, and you can go and buy things by the pound. And this again, you can't really see the dimensional aspect, but it's quite large, probably as big as that, and came out from the wall a huge marine, I think it was probably from the motor or something that the palm rested in. So I kept going, I kept working, in my jobs and then I would have an opportunity on occasion to be part of a group show. In this case, I collaborated with the artist Laverne Covington, and that was the focus of the show. It was in one of those workspaces in St. Petersburg where it used to be called Big C. And this was based on a poem by the Floridian poet Enid Schomer called Rara Omnia. And I chose a couple lines from that poem and executed the assemblages. There's the one piece here, you can see that in the flash there. And it has an urchin in the center, and it's just so happened that it was punctured in the shape of a keyhole. So these are more works from my show at Salt Creek, and that's called Black Halo with Rains. This one is called The Keyhole. And that show I did with the artist Margaret Stewart. Does anybody remember Margaret Stewart? Bergmann? No, and she's not with us anymore. She was an amazing, amazing artist, and I mention this not only because of my love for her, but when we got together to do that show, we had been working independently. She had been a photographer, she was a printmaker as well. She decided to do sculpture for this show that we were doing together. And when we brought our works, We had no discussion, nothing. When we brought our works to the gallery, it looked like one person had done. It looked like, and it was almost alarming. We had used similar materials, and yeah, it was really something. This was from another outdoor show. That's a piece called The Seahorse. That was one of my old Christmas trees there, underneath the one leaning, the leaning soldier there. And that bow, I repurposed an archer's bow. It's called Wild Bow as Hourglass. And it's interesting, and I know many of you have been to wearable art and know the garden fairies work, but they use a lot of the palmettos, and on our honeymoon island where they do the controlled burns, the palmettos almost become like arrows. The fronds burn away and they're like this charred, beautiful, beautiful tips. And I was using that back then, but they use it a lot in constructing their costumes and wings. It works perfectly. This one's called Who's the Fairest of Them All? There's a little lens on the front. And I forget what this is called. I think this was Cabinet of Curiosity. So you'll also see as I go along that, some of these concepts that I loved in my work, I did bring into shows here at the Art Center. For example, we had a show that was based on asking everyone to create a work based on a line of poetry. That was In a Dark Time, The Eye Begins to See, and that was a fabulous show. We made a little book and everybody referenced the line of poetry that they used, but that was a good one. And then we had a show called The Cabinet of Natural Curiosities, which is has anyone seen that amazing coffee table book? And of course it was a phenomenon way back when of aristocratic folk could travel and gather oddities, and they had that in their home. This is called X Marks the Spot, and Delightician. I love to play with my titles. This one was called Juicy. And that's, remember a dodgeball? There's a dodgeball underneath there. Much friendlier version. Here again, I created this piece based on inspiration from a poem by Antonio Machado called I Dreamt Marvelous Error. He doesn't really have any titles for his works, but this was from a translation by Robert Bly. Who loves poetry here? Yes. Does anybody know that poem by chance? I Dreamt Marvelous Error? Oh, I'm going to send it to you. I'll put it on the site, on the Art Center's site. But of course, every time I show this piece, I'm going to go, you're missing the moss, you're missing. And I said, the title is I Dreamt Marvelous Error. And I'm making a honeycomb from my old failures. So these are more recent pieces. This piece was included a couple of years ago at the Morian Art Center in St. Petersburg. They had a show called 100 Artists, 100 Years, and it was an invitational, and I was tremendously honored to have been included. And why I was when I first got out of school, I entered their spring juried show. They had a guest juror, and if you got the best of show, you got your own show. And that happened. And it was not in their original location. It was called the Arts Center then. And it was a really ramshackle little building on 2nd Avenue South, I think, or I'm not saying it right, but I have fond memories of those times at the Arts Center, and what an honor. And it was really Every step along the way, those encouragements mean everything. So now, which brings me, gosh, I better speed up. What time is it? Oh no! Is it really? What time? 20 more minutes. We're getting to the champagne, don't worry. Okay, well here we go, starting at the Art Center. I'm going to start to speed along now. What happened? I was working at Barnes & Noble at the time. I was the community relations manager. I knew Nancy, our director at the time, because I was an artist, and the Art Center had been around for a while, and she was doing great things, and I'd been submitted to shows. So we did a partnership on a children's book illustration exhibit, and at that time, I was pregnant, I was an unmarried lady, and we met for our business meeting about the upcoming children's book illustration exhibit. And Nancy said to me, when you have your baby, I want you to come work with us, and we can bring your baby to work with you. And that's what happened. And that was 19 years ago. And I always know how long I've been here because whatever age Ava is how long I've been at the Art Center. There she is, my little Kima. Here she was. It was her first birthday. And that photo, the original photo, was by Elizabeth Probert, who's not here today. And Elizabeth made a special cake for Ava on her first birthday. And Nancy was such a visionary, such a heart. Who knows Nancy? Raise your hand. Oh, yes. Yes. She and David cultivated a beautiful center here and created such a strong foundation. But she was an artist. She really was a one of a kind. And when Ava came to work, she's a little to my understanding, she was working on a children's book. And this is from it. Can you read? Oh no. But it's so wonderful. It's about growing up. It's Ava. Ava's art stories and art museum adventure, growing up in the art museum. And then she's so funny. I mean, what does she says my mom makes artwork out of junk. And I mean, so we go to the art shows and with other artists and to sell her artwork and win prize money, and she gets them because I'm so cute. But then my mom's talent takes over. I like that. And she even said, and do you go to an art? It's an interactive book. And she goes, do you go to an art show? She goes, sometimes people walk around and they talk about the work. Sometimes they say things that are not very nice and it hurts the artist's feelings. And she covered it all. So there we are. At one time we had a co-op in downtown Dunedin, and that's Ava and I doing a co-op shift at our shop that our wonderful benefactor, Gladys Douglas, provided a space for us. We tried that. We tried a lot of things over the years, didn't we? Here we are. Ava was unusual as a baby. When her teeth came in, instead of like the one on the bottom or the one on the top, she had fangs. And when she lost them, she was just toothless in the front. So she did become an artist. It was unusual. And that was her Raspberry Beret. She was born in 1999, so we always sing Prince on her birthday. And this is her most recent work. From high school. She loves clay. She loves clay. And of course, she came up totally through all of our programs with Mr. Todd. She started in the mini masters. I mean, the kid lived here. And before we had automatic alarming on the building, we'd have to come, when I was doing the education program, we'd have to get in the car and I'd have to come back at 10 o'clock at night and to alarm the building. And she'd be in her pajamas. Mom, do we have to go? We have to. And there's sometimes, so I was the education director. I held many different jobs. First I was the weekend manager. Then I even cleaned. I was facilities. I was the weekend manager. I was the volunteer coordinator. I was education assistant, but not for long, right, Todd? And then I was asked to be the education director of adult education. And I did. And it was wonderful because look at who I got to work with. So we used to have a chili cook-off to celebrate the faculty. And at some point, things changed. Nancy moved on. Georgianne came. David left. David was her husband, was the curator, and I was being the education director. And then when David left, I just loved the art so much. I said, could I be the curator? Could I try my hand at curating? I love the art, I love the artists. And they said yes, but little did I know that I was going to do both jobs. We're all those So at one point, we were always saving on materials and at one point they did a big clean out and they were throwing all the catalogs away that I had labored over. And so I crawled in there. I was picking them up. This is my life here, you people. So then I became a curator, and it's a great privilege. And I have the best job on the staff, and I know how lucky I am. And I'm so lucky to work with such a supportive director who has given me so much freedom and given me so much opportunity for professional development. And I don't know if you are familiar with the American Alliance of Museums. It used to be called the American Association of Museums. But they have a big meeting once a year in one of the major cities. And people from all kinds of museums, from all over the world, join there, discussing what are the best practices in museums these days. Visitor studies, how to draw young audiences, what are the best exhibits of the year. It's so wonderful. And I encourage all of you to become a member of the AAM. And when you become a member, you can go to that annual meeting, you can go for a day, you do pay, but it's so cool, and all the museums in the area are open for the attendees, and you get a membership card that gives you entry to museums. That's it. You just say, I'm a member of AAM, and you don't have to pay at the museums. Which, is that a good thing, Georgianne? But more and more, I think that there are artist curators, but not everyone gives, that was a huge risk, I think, for Georgianne to allow me to do that. And I'm ever grateful. And it is a job that I take very seriously. My first show I did with Roland Posca, and Erwin flew with me. It was through the Untitled Gallery, and he was in Rockford, Illinois. Posca is no longer with us, but that was a wonderful journey with Erwin, driving across in that big truck. And as you can see, our galleries used to have carpeting, and Posca he was a pulp artist and an amazing printmaker. He had a press in Rockford, Illinois that was quite famous in the 60s and 70s called the Fishy Whale Press, and you would see it if you looked at old copies of Art News, you'd see the Fishy Whale Press. But he was such a larger-than-life figure, a heart of gold, and he was very much into social justice issues, and he did a series called As the Master Printer, The Great Human Race, and that was the theme of our hands-on museum one year. And there we were celebrating, and here's how all this time that I've been at the Art Center, it's been the people that I work with that are everything. Does anybody know Kaya? Kaya was the founder of Wearable Art. She was the founder of Contain It. She was our first assistant curator. And Anne, I know Anne's here, but I can't see her. There she is. Anne used to volunteer with us with Kaya. Kaya used to do special events, but only was possible, especially while doing the education, it was only possible with the very, very best people. And these are them. So this was one of the shows we brought in, the Preacher and His Congregation. We were trying to reach out and have some more diversity in our community and our membership, and that was a fabulous exhibit. And that came through Ken, who had been at the Flint Museum of Art, had connections, I should say. And that was the first time we borrowed a show from a museum, and you have to go through all sorts of things for that. Cabinet of Natural Curiosities, I mentioned. So a lot of the curating was done over the internet. You know, it's always great when you can go in person, but this was how we were doing it, and it was a collaborative effort with Kaya and Anne and now Nathan. This is a making instructor at Rollins College. She's still there, Rachel Simmons. This was called The Wonders of the Sea. This is the graphic designer who still does our catalog, Daniel Mergen. He's Croatian. He moved to Montana this last year, but he was an amazing muralist and wood-burning artist. So we never had to look far for great talent among our students, members, and friends in the near community. Here's another, that's a big piece, probably 4 or 5 feet long, carved out of plywood and then burned. This was a show called Sideshow, and Todd and I then over the years developed the pattern of focusing in the fall on the theme that was going to be in the kids area. We would carry that over into the exhibit so that when the kids come through the year, they could see an actual exhibit and then go into the hands-on play, and then they would do activities around what they've learned. So they would learn actual media techniques, and you know, it's a full scale. Todd has an amazing program. When the kids come, and it changes once a year, so next year the same class can come back and they'll see something totally different. But Sideshow was a very popular show. That's John Whipple in the foreground there. We did the Dunedin project with Les Lesnick, and you see those photographs in the cafe today. And that was a wonderful community project. And the idea of that was Les's work and I met Les through the outdoor show circuit. He was a major award winner everywhere over the years and traveled the country. But his work would bring him to Mexico, Cuba, faraway places where he did people as portraits. So he started once he retired. He was really a pharmacist in his workaday life, but he decided to do it in small town America, and he approached us about doing it in Dunedin. So the task was we drove around all the neighborhoods in Dunedin, and he wanted to get multi-generational homes and single-family homes and mixed ethnicities, and we wanted everybody represented. So, and he didn't want you, if we asked, we sent letters of introduction, and if we let us come into the house, you couldn't clean beforehand, because that's not what we wanted to see. So you might have to see that. And some of the photos I think are in the bathrooms even, or around that stuff. They're so cool and love them. And they were sponsored by the late Wally Dutton, who was a wonderful, wonderful ally and friend to the Art Center. So he made that show possible. But what was cool was at the opening, Les made prints for everyone and wrapped it, and everybody got a piece to take home. And there we have someone very special. We did a retrospective show for Brooke. And isn't this beautiful? I love these photos of Brooke. And wow, what a stunning exhibit that was. We're so blessed. The Art Center is so blessed by the great, great talent of the faculty. Isn't that? Then we did one for Steve Littlefield as well. And on these trips that Jordan would send me on to the museums, I would always have the opportunity to look for art. And so the large-scale prints on the top photo, that came from High Point Editions, which is an artist-run and artist edition press in Minneapolis. And that was a fantastic show. So we would always try to represent the media that we teach. And then we would try to give an opportunity for our students and members and faculty to also show. That was the philosophy. And that's what we've done. There are only 4 minutes left. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. See, I thought I was going to go boom, 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 and not. So I'm just going to run through Charlie Parkhill just to show you some of the exhibits. This was Beauty and the Beast. This was a show on mandalas called Encircled. This was Vadis Turner, who's getting a lot of attention in Nashville right now. And of course, Todd brings the kids around all the time. And we did Todd's show, #epic. And pretty much cleaned out the whole house. Carrie was really happy. Because he's an amazing collector, and they live with their collections, which is the way to do it. And then the Cardboard Menagerie. This was, remember me saying that sweetheart, my guy who went to the Art Institute, and I didn't get in? Well, that was my first boyfriend, and now he's married to a billionaire. But he's still a good artist, So I brought him to And here I am, doing the tours. So we were carrying on doing all the things that we always do. Wearable art, Kaya's Inception. And there she is on the runway, the first year. And of course we had so much fun with the interactives. And this was when we had the triple B, bizarre, bodacious bras. And the question mark, those are my Hooters. Who? And Contain It, which we don't do anymore. Who wants to bring Contain It back? And the Lamb is a major artist in the Contain It. And David! Oh my gosh, who enjoyed Contain It? How many? Who would like to see it come back? Oh, thank you. There, and Victoria, Vicky, that's Anand's partner, she also is amazing. They come down from Canada. And then we were doing Treasures. And then we did My Favorite Things. And that's a hotel soap collection. Those were the things that people love. And that's what you'll have a chance to see here. I didn't think I had any collections when I did that show, but oops. Some of this is my work, but most of it is work that I have collected and that I love. And one of my very, very, very favorite artists is up here, and that's my daughter. And she made that lion on the end in the summer camp program. So then we did Shadowbox, and you know. And meanwhile, while things were expanding, oh my, and then Anne, my wonderful, wonderful ally Anne. And now everybody knows that Anne has her own gallery now in downtown Dunedin, right? Anne's Monroe Street Gallery, you must go. You must. But Anne, she volunteered for many years, and she's still volunteering. And she was my ace ally, and I couldn't have done it without her. We had so many laughs, didn't we? And there's a Stephen Kenny show that we did during Wearable Art one year. And then there's the work of curating, which is really, it sounds good. But here in the trucks, and all the time we were in those hot trucks, and bringing shows off-site, and no, it is good. I'm just making it sound making me feel sorry for me. No, it's wonderful. That's our favorite part, actually. We like the hands-on. And that was our Cuba show. And so I do want to say that all of these things have been made possible by the support of a wonderful leadership and loving friends. Ronnie brought me on a trip to New York City, to an art fair, and to seeing art. Seeing art is what it's all about. See as much art as you can, and do it with somebody you love. Collegial support. This was Nathan's show, Triangulate. And our visitors, our interested art inspectors, and our faculty, our wonderful faculty. We've had Susan retired, but she's still around. Steve retired, but he's still around. And some people that have been very big in the part of the Art Center. I've been here 19 years, Todd's been here going on 22, I think, 21, 22. But there have been really key players over the years. Jennifer was one. There's our show, Plants Illustrated. And Mary Borsick, this was from her memorial, who we lost, our wonderful Mary. So it takes a team. And that's King Bob. Before we didn't have a King Bob, but he is the one who did all this today, and he helps with moving the pedestals, and he helps us with every event, and it's fabulous. So those are the good things that come from growing. And what happened to me with growing was 4 years ago, they split my job in half. So now we have Brandy's with Sarah, and we've had several education directors, but Sarah, who's been with us all that time, is now heading the ship, and great things are happening. And this was one of the Trashy Treasures that John Ryben made these great, great portraits, and we were like, wait a minute, these people look like some of the staff. So, Gail, who is the queen of Trashies, she's our guru. And we got Laura Lee, because that's a halo, or that purple is a halo. That looks like Georgie. Nathan, Sarah. And you know what? Who gets to work with people who like to dress up? Have fun. I'm so lucky. Look at Sarah. She's a super. A super. And our wonderful creative community, we couldn't do it without you. We love you. Ursula planted the garden. She waters it. She comes in. Did you know that? Those are her flowers. She comes and waters every day. And all of the crazy people. And a lot of these photographs, well, I don't know if a lot of them, but we have our star, Michael, right here, who gives of her time and talent for many, many events, wearable art. She spends hours. Thank you, Michael. And Susan, so we, everybody's always still with us. The Garings moved to the mountains, we miss them, but they're a big part of this place. That was when we did Mardi Gras, and that's our ofrenda. Ronnie donated beautiful marigolds for that, so. During the Day of the Dead. No, these are the steel magnolias. These are Bev and Clarine and Angelia, Carol, who have volunteered so many years. Family. The artist in her element. And then we get awards sometimes. Great volunteers. And there, 40 years, there's Georgianne and Laura Lee. Was our 40th birthday cake. And Georgianne is a true visionary as well. Bringing this place to this, wow. At some point I was like, would you stop? No more floors, no more. I know I need to stop. Let me just do a few more. Okay, and things change. My daughter graduated. This was when we did Concorso. If I had known Dunedin was this nice, I would have come back sooner. Jesus. I was a great artist, indeed. See, we don't have to go. We're here. We don't have to go. We know how great it is. And there's our mission. Can't stop, won't stop. Demi's design for wearable art. And the loving cup goes to you all. The loving cup is for you. Inspiration comes from poetry. I'm going to read that real quick before I change it. Can you stand perfectly still and hold this moment open? It's the poet Sylvia Corbello. Uh-oh, wrong way. Music. Music's ever inspiration. Solitude. Nature. Imperfection, how the light gets in. Not today. That's called rest, aka procrastination. Discovery, humor, curiosity, acceptance, chaos. Mystery, resilience, magic, wonder, love, love, love. Curiosities. And thank you. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.